Good afternoon. It's Stacey Ashley here. Friday afternoon, well, for me anyway. And I just wanted to drop in for, I guess, a final thought of the week. And it's all about the responsibility of leaders to create more leaders. So welcome if you are watching. Great to have you here. I'd love to know your thoughts on this topic. And if you're watching the replay, then I'd love to know your thoughts as well. So I'm just going to get rid of my banner so my team doesn't get upset with me. Okay, so I guess what prompted this is I've been having lots of conversations with leaders. I had the great joy of watching a Simon Sinek Live interview earlier this week, and it's all about this responsibility of leaders to create more leaders, with some leaders saying, well, actually, is that really part of my job? If I'm doing my job as a leader, do I then have to go above and beyond to create more leaders? So I thought what I would do is I would share a story, because it just popped back into my brain and I'd actually forgotten this story from a couple of years ago. So what happened was I was invited to speak about my book, my original book, The New Leader, a couple of years ago. And I was at a luncheon with a whole lot of CEOs and MDs. And of course, we were talking about leadership and, personal responsibility for leadership and that sort of thing. And so I did my talk, which was great. But then during lunch, there was a really interesting conversation. And this is what I wanted to share with you, because it really highlights for me the gap in awareness of the responsibility that leaders have to create more leaders. So these are all super experienced, very senior leaders, some who have been at the C-suite level for many, many years, some, not quite as much. But it was a conversation that came about because one of those leaders was approaching retirement. So again, if this is something that resonates with you, this whole leaders need to create more leaders, then pop it in the comments. Anyway, so this particular leader had been the CEO of their organization for, quite a long time, and they were approaching retirement. And anyway, he was sort of telling the story of his retirement that was coming up and all the great things he was going to do. But he was also lamenting the fact that there wasn't an obvious successor in his team of direct reports, and he was talking about how disappointed he was that none of those people had stepped up, that they weren't exhibiting the level of competence and skill required to be able to step into his role. And he was just saying, how incredibly disappointed he was about that. And so I asked a couple of questions, which is, for those who know me, that's the coaching way. So I asked a couple of questions because I really wanted to understand, what's going on here, because, that seems an unusual sort of situation. Anyway, what he said, the first question I asked him was this: how long have you been working with these people that are, your direct reports, your C-suite team? And he said to me that he'd been working with them all for a reasonable amount of time. In fact, probably the shortest amount of time that anyone had been in that C-suite team was about 3 years, possibly 4 years, and some of them much, much longer. So this is an organisation that have very long tenure. Anyway, so he had been working with these people a minimum of 3 to 4 years, and he didn't have anyone who was a good candidate to step into his role when he retired. Now, so I was like, wow, this is super interesting. I'm just checking if I've got any comments here. Not yet, but I certainly love to hear some. Anyway, so he said that, there was this gap, but he'd been working with them for a long time. And I said to him, and I, foolishly, I probably shouldn't have said it quite this way, but I said something like, oh gosh, that seems like a failure of leadership. And he kind of looked at me and he was quite shocked, and he kind of glared at me across the table. And he said to me, and this is what really stuck with me. He said to me, "Are you suggesting it's my fault that they're not ready, and that they don't have the skills and to step up to that level?" And I thought, because it was a bit confrontational. And I'm supposed to be the guest speaker at a luncheon. I'm not supposed to be creating Whipples. And I said to him, well, if not you, then who? Like if the most senior leader in the organization is not going to take responsibility for developing their direct reports and developing more leaders and growing more leaders, then who has that responsibility? Who is it? Because I'd love to know. And so then it was my turn to be shocked, because as a senior leader, it would seem to me to be obvious that you have this real responsibility to grow other leaders, that you have a responsibility to develop people. You know about leadership. You've been doing it for a really long time. Should you not share that knowledge? And should you not be role modeling what being a leader is? And should you not be coaching people to step up and take accountability and learn and grow and develop themselves so that they too can step up and also cascade down and grow other leaders? And so it was a real eye-opening moment for me that actually it's not as obvious as perhaps I think it is. And so my question then to you is, how do you feel about that responsibility that leaders have to grow more leaders, to develop more leaders, to create more leaders? Because if not you, then who? This is my question. I believe that all leaders have a very clear, fundamental, primary responsibility to create more leaders. It doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to do that. And so that's where learning and development and training and coaching and all of those things come in. But there is a fundamental responsibility that all leaders have to create more leaders, because we need to have that succession. We need to have that growth. We need to elevate the practice of leadership, because if we don't, what are we left with? So that's, I guess that's my parting thought of the week. And again, I would love to know your thoughts and comments on this. And I'm just seeing a comment. Let me just read that. So some leaders pretend that they're great leaders, but they aren't. They're just managers. Good leaders lead by example and empower and develop others. I absolutely agree with that. But I also feel like we need to teach leaders how to develop other leaders. It's not necessarily an innate skill set. So there is a responsibility within organizations and ever more senior leaders to actually be equipping their leaders, not with just leadership knowledge, but also with the knowledge and the skills and the confidence to be able to then pass that knowledge on and to grow more leaders. So it's a bit of a cycle. But as I said, that's my parting thought for the week. I would love to know your thoughts, so please comment. This is a topic that's really dear to my heart. And if you are around on Sunday evening on the 1st of November, then I am launching my next book, and I would love for you to be part of that celebration. So I'll be streaming then at 7 p.m. Sydney time on all the platforms, just as I am now. So LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and hopefully Instagram as well. So I'd love to see you then. You can come join me and find out all about my new book, First Lead Yourself. In the meantime, have a great weekend and share your comments with me.